Good day, everyone. I am, and welcome to I Am Vibes. And this is your introduction to the philosophy of the human persons class. For today's lesson, we are going to discuss the virtues of prudence and frugality towards environment. This lesson presents the pressing environmental issues in our society and their impact on the lives of the human persons. This will also enable the students to become aware of the different environmental risks and thus lead them to formulate some alternatives which aim for the protection and conservation of the environment. According to Aristotle, the environmental quality and the human person's relation to the environment are increasingly considered as an essential component of a good life. Introducing some virtue perspectives into the study of environmental issues may bring light to the ethical and existential relevance, which is a way to a better life. The interplay between a human person and the environment discusses the human person's anthropocentric ways in achieving the standard of human life way and his or her exploitation in all other natural species and resources in natural environments to meet his or her unlimited wants and needs. Human person's dependency to feed, clothe, and house compromises the rest of the environment. The human needs, the things that are required for life, and the human want, the things that add comfort and pleasure, are both unlimited and will never end. The great demands on those are threatening the future of the sustainable life of the environment. Natural resources and raw materials such as oil, minerals, timber, rivers, and air are being supplied by nature. However, the supply may be limited and the increased consumption may damage the environment and may threaten natural resources. But through a human person's ecocentric attitude, it partly shows a promise that he or she can also have a great contribution to solving environmental disorder through conservation that preserves resources. Before we go over to our discussion, let us first have this situation. A self-supporting senior high school student works part-time as a fast food service crew to be able to fund his or her education. He or she earns 1,500 pesos more than what he or she needs to pay for school and other expenses. With his or her extra money, he or she could have bought a new iPhone unit that he or she wants to buy. Thinking practically, he or she decided to keep his or her money as savings instead. The senior high school student shows a direction and control over what he or she needs, over what he or she wants, by being prudent and frugal with his or her money. The attitude of being prudent and frugal are two necessary characteristics that need to apply in solving environmental disorder. What is environmental disorder? How are you going to identify that there is already an environmental disorder? When we say environmental disorder, it is a state of an environment where things are not in its proper place due to unlimited human activities. In this definition, three things are to be considered. First, things are not in place of comfort and warmth due to human intervention or natural alteration. Second, when the environment harms the biotic community and nature results from non-stop and extensive human economic activities. And third, the unavailability of a local byproduct that may imply local disturbance that is not at par with its production. The arising current environmental disorders of the world may negatively have impacted both businesses and health hazards that lead to loss of man-hours and efficiency. These problems are a complicated chain of issues, each with its impact. Some have long-term impacts and may require years of recovery efforts. Historically, the environmental problem has two stages which correspond the two origins. The two origins of the environmental problem by Cato 2015. First is the stage of environmental destruction and pollution, which followed the Industrial Revolution. It has its origin in the advancement of technology and the spread of industry. There are four primary impact points when it comes to industrialization: in air, water, soil, and habitat. Air pollution is caused by the smoke and emissions generated by burning fossil fuels. Water pollution, where factories are built next to natural water resources, where toxins can come in a variety of forms like solid, liquid, or gaseous, and they can all end up contaminating the local water supplies. Soil contamination through heavy metals and toxic chemicals, and in turn contaminate any crops that grow. And then we have dramatic habitat destruction, like forests are cut down for their lumber and ecosystems are destroyed to create roads, strip mines, and gravel pits, and plant and animal extinction. The second origin is a stage in which nature lost its ontological priority and its status as a model. An ontological priority means nature was considered to be a priority to human activities and artifacts, not only in time but also in worth and dignity. In losing nature's ontological priority, it considers as a simple means to an end, and as an object of exploitation. The gate opened for the subjugation and exploitation of nature. It has something to do with human lifestyle-related diseases. Now, what do you think makes environmental problems so difficult to manage? What human values are necessary to apply in solving great environmental problems? One of the answers could be transferring solutions to the environmental problems. There is no quick fix or magical remedy. The issue of environmental problems extends over a very long period, going beyond a single generation. It is transgenerational. At the same time, it also extends beyond political territories. It is transnational and global. One of the major difficulties related to the environmental problem is that its solution requires a change in lifestyle for all human persons. The human person should refrain from relegating the solution and responsibility to certain specialists such as politicians or scientists alone. There are three reasons for this cautious approach according to Cato 2015. First, as history shows, progress in science has not kept pace with the destruction of the environment. Much of the remedy it offers often come too late. Second, the human person should also take into consideration that scientists require an enormous amount of money for research, and money comes mostly from the government and industries. And third, the exaggerated worship of science can fix and harden the human person's relationship with nature in such a way that his or her peaceful coexistence with it becomes difficult to achieve. This is the problem discussed by the previous lesson in anthropocentrism. It is therefore cautious to regard the environmental problem as a kind of lifestyle-related disease that cannot be cured by a single operation or a powerful medicine. The human person should think himself or herself as a patient with a lifestyle-related disease and is expected to change his or her lifestyle to a healthier one, so One must be willing to change his or her ways of life to address the environmental problem and required to employ observation whether an environment is organized or not. This change concerns not only the present but also future generations. Now let us talk about the virtues of prudence and frugality towards environment. In the alarming problem of the environment, the human person must demonstrate the virtue of prudence and frugality to eradicate or minimize environmental problems, just like the attitude shown by the part-time senior high school student towards his or her savings. Prudence was considered by the most notably Thomas Aquinas as the cause, measure, and form of all virtues. It is considered to be the auriga virtutum, or the charioteer or father of all virtues, because it is defined to be the perfected ability of a man as a spiritual person to make the right decisions. When we say prudence, it is cautious, wise, and good decision making. On the other hand, a frugal person always finds a way to minimize the monetary cost of his or her action while trying to keep it lower than his or her useful needs. For example, the person decides to buy rice, he buys it in sacks, wholesale or bulk, to minimize the cost of the fare, plastic bag or container, effort and time. The level of consumption of a frugal person is lower than that of a typical consumer. Thus, the person is less subjected to hidden environmental costs. The word frugality is oftentimes used in money, thriftiness, or quality of being economical. Wikipedia defines frugality as the quality of being frugal, sparing, thrifty, prudent, or economical in the consumption of consumable resources such as food, time, or money, and avoiding waste, lavishness, or extravagance. Frugality is a lifestyle and a life choice, and it is also very personal. Frugality is a philosophy that is different for every human person. Know what frugal means to you so that you can stop pinching pennies and apply it in all spheres of your life while being extremely productive and happy about it too. From Socrates to Thoreau, most philosophers, moralists, and religious leaders have seen frugality as a virtue and have associated simple living with wisdom, integrity, and happiness. Emrys Westacott, Alfred's University philosophy professor, on his book, The Wisdom of Frugality, Why Less is More or Less, examines why, for more than 2 millennia, so many philosophers and people with a reputation for wisdom have been advocating frugality and simple living as the key to a good life. He also looks at why most people have ignored them but argues that, in a world facing an environmental crisis, it may finally be time to listen to the advocates of a simpler way of life. The book Wisdom of Frugality explores that simplicity means and why it is supposed to make a human person better and happier. Moreover, it explains that despite its benefits, it has always been such a hard sell. The book looks not only at the arguments in favor of living frugality and simply, but also at the case that can be made for luxury and extravagance, including the idea that modern economies require lots of getting and spending. It argues that human person will be better off as individuals and as a society if he or she moves away from the materialistic individualism that currently rules. Therefore, if frugality is applied in the environment, this means that human persons have to conserve as well as protect the environment. The word frugality is coupled with the word prudence, which simply means an intelligent use of limited resources, creating a better world in the environment. The human person will act, uses, and harness all available resources possible in his or her environment conservatively and intelligently, and of course with all due respect to the society and human life as well. So how environmental problems caused by the human person affect health, well-being, and sustainable development? The human person must remember that environment contributes to all living organisms on Earth, most especially human life, from his or her health to well-being to sustainable development. A healthy population is very important for economic development, especially for a rich labor force country like the Philippines. Poorest people on the planet tend to suffer most from the health problems as effects from exposure to environmental hazards like air pollution and impure water. Exposures to air and water pollutants directly increase disease. In turn, disease and disability related to polluted environments slow and block economic development. An effect of this, human suffering and illnesses carry a significant financial burden in the form of healthcare expenditures and lost productivity. So for example, unhealthy children often cannot attend or perform well in school. Unhealthy adults cannot work or care for their families, and unhealthy leaders cannot perform their tasks well. Economic development has led to tremendous improvements in people's well-being, but often at the expense of the environment. In the song Kapaligiran by Asin, it says, hindi na masama ang pag-unlad at malayo-layo na rin ang ating narating. Different stories presented that few people had already reached transcendence, but in return, compromising the healthy environment. It is also evident in the effects of globalization and the large geographic scale that rapid industrialization is occurring, making environmental health problems turn to global health harms. A healthy environment contributes much to the country's sustainable development. When we say sustainable development, it is frequently defined as development that meets the needs of the present generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own need. As evidence of the harm to health and well-being from widespread environmental degradation and global climate change grows, communities and governments are placing greater emphasis on assuring that economic development is achieved sustainably. Protecting and creating healthy environments are critical components of sustainable development. Environmental health can be integrated into sustainable development by improving environmental quality for the poorest populations with the greatest burden of environmental diseases, by reducing exposures to air pollution in homes and villages from biomass burning and providing clean water and sanitation. Identifying efforts to address environmental problems that can also provide health benefits. For example, creating environments that encourage biking and walking for transportation, reduces greenhouse gas and toxic air pollution emissions, and increase physical activity. Then, recognizing that some policies, practices, and technologies designed to promote sustainability and economic development may have unintended adverse environmental health effects, and attempting to prevent or mitigate this before they are implemented. The three key principles for sustainable development are economic, environmental, and social sustainability. Economic stability or efficiency refers to prudence in decision-making regarding the use of resources to ensure that there is a minimum to zero waste. Environmental integrity refers to maintaining the state of the environment where human activities should not unduly disrupt the ecosystem and human communities located in the area. Equity means fair and reasonable use of the natural resources in such a manner that these are conserved so that the next generation will be able to use them. Sustainable development can affect how a community develops, and it can also have an impact on environmental and social stability. Since tourism in the Philippines boosts the economy and is driven by natural resources, then it is important to preserve the Philippines' environment. When the Philippines' economy is experiencing steady growth and its natural resources are protected, social sustainability can be achieved. All three principles must be maintained simultaneously. The value of environmental aesthetics, a philosophical view that believes in maintaining order in the environment that will bring out the natural beauty of the surroundings and contribute to the well-being of the people and other organisms living in it. The appreciation of natural beauty brings about the concern for the environment and helps people relate more effectively with nature. As a human person, it is our responsibility to start with our actions and how they affect our immediate surroundings. It is our responsibility to treat with respect not only our fellow humans, but also everything in the world. Thank you so much for attentively listening to our lesson. This time, let us now proceed to the assessment section. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I am Vibes.